Mr. Black?
Yeah, I would second that. If we look at what Talk Plus does, our users drive more minutes and more data plans for the carriers. So carriers in the United States have very low amount, the threshold of a number of people that actually have a data plan is actually very low in the United States. So every time a Talk Plus user goes online with a carrier, no matter which carrier it is, we drive their data plans. So we're actually driving revenues for them, both on the data side and we're driving it on the voice side. If you treat this like the internet in a way, which one's more valuable, the infrastructure, people buying the pipes, or all the e-commerce that goes across it? That's the first part. The second part is, there's no place to innovate right now, and that's the part that's not being talked about here. If a startup has an application and they want to go to a carrier and say, I've got a great application, can I put it up in your catalog in the sky? And they look at you and they go, okay, one of two things. They can say yes, and they can, on average, they'll take 40 to 50% of your gross revenues. Could you imagine what the carriers would do if NAMPA, where they get their phone numbers from, required them to pay 40 to 50% of their gross revenues to get phone numbers, which is critical for any carrier to survive? Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, every one of them would go out of business in a year, flat. So there's no place to innovate right now unless we can actually make this happen.
Time is expired. Mr. McCabe, I would like to address my last question to you. Do you really think that there is a place in today's industry for small carriers, given the fact that recently there has been several acquisitions announced that will consolidate mid-size carriers into large national carriers?
Madam Chair, let me take that from two different perspectives. Second, address the question about consolidation and some concerns that I think those at this table and elsewhere share. But first, I think there absolutely is a place for different size carriers, small, medium, and large. The FCC calls them Tier 1, 2, and 3. It makes sense from the perspective that carriers don't build out to the entire geographic area of the country. They don't build out generally to 100% of the population. In areas it's just cost prohibitive. Some companies decide to build a business model around focusing on those high cost areas and accordingly go to the FCC for universal service funding. And I know we've been in front of this committee and others suggesting that wireless carriers should continue to have access to the universal service fund as more and more people move towards a wireless device. So I think absolutely there's a place for it. I think that companies will continue to be able to, contrary to Congressman, will continue to have access to spectrum. I think it will be difficult at times, particularly when you come to an auction like 700, where the hype has been built up so much that it's almost as if this spectrum has been designed for a specific purpose, which is sort of a fourth generation network. But you look at the previous 700 megahertz auction, and their companies were able to secure some licenses. And I think going forward, this is certainly not the last time we will be looking for spectrum. I can assure you there's been discussions about this is the last great piece of spectrum. I'm already in discussions with NTIA about where we can go next to get spectrum. It's part of my job. I've been doing it for 6 years, and I imagine that... Are
you hopeful that there will be new entrants?
Yeah. Yes, I'm hopeful that there will be new entrants. We had in the AWS auction, Spectrum Co., while it wasn't a small company, was a brand new provider, the cable providers. Additionally, Metro, PCS, and Leap, which were small companies, decided to participate on a grand scale and secured financing. With regard to the consolidation issue, I think, and I referenced this in my testimony, I am concerned that in a competitive industry such as ours, where margins are thin, when you begin to pile on, almost like a Christmas tree and ornaments, you begin to pile on regulatory requirements, you really start to squeeze that margin. And that margin gets tighter and tighter, and Mr. Bond and Ms. Spencer can address this much better than I can. But that margin gets tighter and tighter, particularly if you don't have the economies to spread those costs over. So when you look at issues like E911, CALIA, CPNI, we just ended up in a debate with the Commission over upgrades over Katrina backup power issues, and we have played in the Regulatory Flexibility Act space to suggest that there should be a difference. But those areas do cause significant concern and do really press on the margins.
Any other comment,
Yes,
Mr. Bond?
I think it's important to realize that this spectrum auction was tailored around specific applications and apparently tailored for specific carriers, or specific sized carriers. Of the 20% of the spectrum that is allocated to C block, to CMA-sized geographic areas where small carriers actually have an opportunity to bid versus the much larger regions that the other 80% is allocated to, where you have to be a multi-billion-dollar company to have a chance at bidding at those. So as long as the question was asked, is Spectrum pretty much resigned now to the large carriers and the small carriers are left out, unless the rules are changed, and unless the designs for these auctions are set up in such a way that it's a level playing field for all size carriers? The answer is absolutely yes, but it is self-fulfilling. I mean, that's the path we're obviously taking, and that's why one reason that I'm here today to say possibly we need to stop going in that direction.
We
Thank
hear you.
The other thing, Chairman, I would just point out is that when Congress gave the FCC auction authority, it included specifically in 309J that you cited at the beginning of this hearing, a requirement that the auction be designed to give opportunity for small businesses and rural telephone companies and those owned by women and minorities. So the statute says it's got to work that way. The question I think we're posing is it's not right now, and will it change?